The transport ship's bay doors hissed open, revealing the sprawling military compound of Sector 7. Lieutenant Jake Morrison stepped onto the platform, his standard-issue boots clanging against alien metal. Around him, towering Valorian warriors moved with predatory grace, their silver skin gleaming under artificial lights. "The human arrives," someone muttered in thickly accented universal. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Jake straightened his shoulders. He'd been assigned as tactical liaison to Commander Ria Valtoris, the Valorians' most decorated strategist and their finest combat specialist. The assignment was either a great honor or a cruel joke. Based on the smirks surrounding him, Jake suspected the latter. "Lieutenant Morrison." The voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade through silk. Jake turned, his breath caught. Commander Ria stood 7 feet tall, her athletic frame wrapped in form-fitting tactical armor that accentuated every powerful curve. Her silver skin seemed to shimmer with an inner light, and her eyes, deep violet with flecks of gold, assessed him with unsettling intensity. Midnight black hair fell past her shoulders, in intricate braids woven with ceremonial metal. "Commander," Jake saluted, forcing professionalism despite feeling like a child next to her imposing presence. "They said the Alliance was sending their best." Her full lips curved into something between a smile and a challenge. "Yet they send someone so small." More laughter erupted. Heat crept up Jake's neck. "Size isn't everything, Commander," he replied evenly. "I graduated top of my class in tactical operations and advanced combat scenarios." Ria circled him slowly, her movements fluid and deliberate. Jake felt her gaze travel along his body, assessing, cataloging. When she leaned close, her breath warm against his ear, he caught an intoxicating scent, something like midnight storms and foreign spices. "We shall see, human. Tomorrow at dawn, we begin training exercises. Keep up if you can." She straightened, addressing the assembled warriors. "Dismissed. All except Morrison." The crowd dispersed, leaving Jake alone with Ria in the vast bay. She moved to a weapons rack, selecting a curved blade that gleamed wickedly in the light. "Your quarters are in the human section," she said without looking at him. "But you will train in my facilities. If you cannot match Valorian standards, you will be reassigned to cargo processing." "I won't fail, Commander." "Everyone says that." She finally turned and something flickered in those violet eyes. Not quite contempt, but perhaps expectation of disappointment. "But humans always do. Your bodies are weak, your reflexes slow, your endurance." She paused, her gaze drifting down his frame again, limited. Jake met her stare. "Give me a chance to surprise you." Ria's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Oh, I suspect you will try, Lieutenant. Whether you succeed—" She stepped closer, close enough that Jake had to tilt his head back to maintain eye contact. Her hand rose, and for a moment, he thought she might touch him. Instead, she reached past him, activating a wall panel. A holographic display sprang to life, showing tomorrow's training scenario. It looked brutal. "Rest well tonight," Ria murmured. "You will need it." As Jake walked toward his quarters, he felt her eyes on him the entire way. The sensation sent an unexpected shiver down his spine. Part intimidation, part something else entirely. Something that made his pulse quicken, despite the exhaustion settling into his bones. Tomorrow, he would show them all what humans could do. Dawn arrived like a hammer blow. Jake stumbled into the training arena at 0500 hours, every muscle still protesting yesterday's orientation. The arena was massive. A kilometer of varied terrain including obstacles, climbing walls, and combat zones. 50 Valorian warriors stood in formation, their expressions ranging from bored to openly hostile. Commander Ria stood at the center, somehow looking even more formidable in her training gear. The fitted bodysuit left little to the imagination, displaying the powerful muscles of her arms, the curve of her waist, the strength in her thighs. Jake forced his attention to her face. "Standard morning exercises," she announced. "Morrison will participate at full Valorian standards. No accommodations for human limitations." The next 3 hours were hell. Jake ran until his lungs burned, climbed until his fingers bled, fought against opponents who threw him around like a toy. By hour 4, he could barely stand. Valorian warriors completed the circuit with barely elevated breathing. Jake collapsed against a wall, chest heaving, vision swimming. Rhea approached, not even winded. She crouched before him, and Jake caught that intoxicating scent again through his exhausted haze. Struggling already? Her tone was neutral, but something in her eyes suggested genuine curiosity rather than mockery. Just getting started, Jake gasped. Her hands suddenly pressed against his chest, feeling his racing heartbeat. The contact sent electricity through him despite his exhaustion. Your heart rate is dangerously elevated. Your species is so fragile. I can continue. I didn't say stop. Rhea's fingers lingered a moment longer before withdrawing. I said you're fragile. There's a difference. She stood. Observation period complete. Now we begin actual training. Jake stared. That was observation? I needed to see your limits. Rhea extended her hand. Now I'll teach you how to exceed them. Jake grasped her hand. She pulled him up effortlessly, but didn't immediately release him. Her thumb brushed across his knuckles, bloodied from the climbing wall. You didn't quit, she said quietly. That's unexpected. Over the following weeks, Jake became Rhea's shadow. She trained him personally, while the other warriors watched with growing confusion. He learned Valorian fighting techniques, studied their tactical philosophy, absorbed their language and customs. More importantly, he learned her. Rhea was methodical, brilliant, and surprisingly patient. She pushed him brutally, but never beyond what he could actually achieve. During breaks, they talked about strategy, about their worlds, about the war that had brought their species together. Jake discovered she had a sharp wit hidden beneath her commander's facade. She discovered he had a strategic mind that approached problems differently than Valorian tradition allowed. Late one night, reviewing battle scenarios in her private office, Rhea leaned close to point at a holographic display. Her shoulder pressed against Jake's, and he felt the warmth of her through both their uniforms. This flanking maneuver, she said, her voice low in the dim room. The standard approach would be predictable, Jake finished. But if we split the force here and created a false retreat? His hand moved through the hologram, adjusting the tactical formation. Rhea went still. That's actually brilliant. None of my officers suggested that. Because you trained them to think like you, Jake said, turning to find her face inches from his. Sometimes an outside perspective helps. Her violet eyes searched his, and Jake felt the air between them charged with something dangerous and electric. Rhea's hand rose, her fingers brushing along his jawline with surprising gentleness. You're not what I expected, Lieutenant Morrison. Jake, he breathed. When we're alone, call me Jake. Jake. She tested his name, her accent making it sound exotic. Her thumb traced his lower lip, and Jake's heart thundered. You're making this complicated. Before Jake could respond, an alarm blared. They jerked apart as Rhea's communication device activated. Her expression shifted instantly back to commander mode. Report, she ordered crisply. But as she listened to the incoming message, her eyes remained on Jake, filled with something that looked remarkably like hunger. You cannot be serious. General Vex loomed over Rhea's desk, his massive frame radiating disapproval. You want him on your tactical team for the Crucible? The Crucible, Sector 7's most grueling combat simulation, designed to test elite Valorian squads. No human had ever participated, let alone been suggested for a command position. Rhea met the general's glare without flinching. Lieutenant Morrison has demonstrated exceptional strategic thinking and adaptability, qualities we'll need against the Syndicate forces. He's a human. He'll be a liability. Then let me prove otherwise. Rhea's voice dropped dangerously low. Or are you afraid a human might outperform your hand-picked warriors? The challenge hung in the air. General Vex's jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. Fine. But when he fails, and he will, you'll accept a traditional Valorian partner. No more of this. experiment. After Vex left, Rhea found Jake in the training arena, moving through combat forms she'd taught him. His movements were smoother now, more confident. Sweat darkened his shirt, plastering it to his lean frame. She watched longer than necessary before clearing her throat. Jake spun, dropping into a defensive stance before recognizing her. "Commander, I didn't hear you approach." "Good. That means you're learning." She moved closer. "We have a problem." Jake listened as she explained the situation, his expression growing more determined with each word. "So if I mess up, you lose credibility." "Yes." "And if I succeed?" "Then you'll have done what no human has accomplished. You'll have their respect." She paused. "And you'll have proven me right." Jake stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "Is that what matters to you? Being right?" "What matters," Rhea said carefully, "is showing them that strength comes in many forms, that alliances mean accepting different capabilities." Her hand rose to his chest again, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath her palm. "But yes, I want to be right about you." The intensity in her gaze made Jake's breath catch. "Rhea, we cannot." But even as she said it, her other hand came up, cupping his face. "You're my subordinate. And human. The complications." "I know." Jake covered her hand with his. "But that doesn't change this." For a long moment, they stood frozen. The world narrowed to the space between them. Then Rhea's control cracked. She pulled him into a fierce kiss, her superior height making him rise on his toes to meet her properly. Jake's hands slid up her arms, marveling at the strength in them, the smoothness of her silver skin. Rhea kissed like she fought, with complete commitment and devastating effectiveness. When she finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "That was," Jake started. "A mistake," Rhea finished, but her hands remained on him, contradicting her words. "We have 4 days until the Crucible. That must be our focus." "Agreed." Jake's thumb traced her lower lip in echo of what she'd done to him weeks ago. "But after?" "After, we'll see if you survive." The words were teasing, but worry flickered in her eyes. "The Crucible is dangerous, Jake. Real weapons, real scenarios. Valorians have died in the simulation." "Then I guess you better make sure I'm ready." Those 4 days became an intense blur. Rhea trained Jake with single-minded determination, pushing him harder than ever. But something had shifted between them. When she corrected his stance, her hands lingered. When they reviewed tactics late into the night, they sat closer than necessary. Stolen glances became loaded with promise. The other warriors noticed. Whispers followed them through the compound. Some were scandalized. Others were intrigued. A few were openly hostile toward Jake. The night before the Crucible, someone confronted him. Lieutenant Kale, one of Rhea's officers, cornered Jake in the corridor. The Valorian warrior was massive, even by his species standards, his silver skin bearing the scars of countless battles. "You're making a fool of the commander," Kale growled. "I'm following orders." "You're clouding her judgment. Rhea is the finest warrior of our generation, and you, a weak human, are distracting her with your—" He sneered. "Whatever this is." Jake stood his ground despite the size difference. "Rhea makes her own decisions. If you doubt her judgment, take it up with her." "I doubt you." Kale stepped closer, using his height advantage to intimidate. "Tomorrow, in the Crucible, you'll expose yourself as the fraud you are, and then she'll see what we all see, that humans don't belong among warriors." After Keel left, Jake leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. Was he in over his head? Would he embarrass Rhea and prove all their doubts right? Warm hands touched his shoulders. Rhea had appeared silently, her expression troubled. "I heard Kale is protective." "He's right to be concerned." Jake turned to face her. "What if I fail tomorrow? What if I get someone killed because I'm not good enough?" Rhea's hands framed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You won't fail. I've watched you adapt, learn, overcome every obstacle. You think differently than we do. That's your strength, not your weakness." She kissed his forehead gently. Trust yourself, Jake. I already do. Even though we've only known each other. Time is irrelevant. Her thumb brushed his cheek. I've seen who you are when tested. That tells me everything. They stood in the empty corridor, holding each other as if they could stop tomorrow from coming. Finally, Rhea pulled back reluctantly. Rest tonight. Tomorrow. Show 'em all what I see when I look at you. The Crucible arena sprawled before them like a mechanical nightmare. Holographic enemies, real weapons, environmental hazards that could kill. 5-person teams would navigate scenarios designed to test every aspect of combat and tactical thinking. Jake stood in formation with Rhea's team, herself, Kale, and 2 other elite warriors named Thorn and Vesa. The other teams watched with obvious skepticism. In the observation gallery, General Vex sat forward, waiting for failure. Standard rules, the arena controller announced. Complete all 3 scenarios. Mission failure or teammate casualties result in disqualification. Begin. The first scenario dropped them into an urban combat zone. Holographic enemies appeared with startling realism, their weapons firing actual energy rounds that could stun or injure. The team moved with practiced coordination, except Jake, who had to consciously keep up with their faster reflexes. Left flank, Rhea commanded. Jake saw the ambush a heartbeat before her. Wait, it's a diversion. The real attack is coming from above. Rhea's eyes flashed to the rooftops. Understanding dawned instantly. Thorn Vesa, up high. Morrison, with Kale on suppression. They repositioned in seconds. When the actual attack came from the rooftops, they were ready. The holographic enemies fell to precise covering fire, while Rhea executed a flanking maneuver that would have been impossible if they'd taken the bait. Scenario complete. The second scenario was a hostage situation requiring both combat prowess and careful strategy. Here, Jake's different perspective became crucial. Valorian tactics favored direct assault, but Jake suggested a more nuanced approach. If we breach here and here simultaneously, he indicated on Rhea's tactical display, the enemy will retreat to these positions. But if we make them think we're breaching from the south, they'll reposition, leaving the actual hostages vulnerable for extraction. Kale scoffed. Deception? We are warriors, not cowards. We are smart warriors, Rhea corrected sharply. Morrison's plan has merit. We execute it. The deception worked flawlessly. While the holographic enemies focused on the false breach, Jake and Vesa slipped in to extract the hostages. 0 casualties. In the observation gallery, General Vex's expression had shifted from smug anticipation to grudging interest. The final scenario was the hardest, a full-scale battle simulation with limited resources and overwhelming odds. Teams that had come this far often failed here. The scenario was designed to be nearly impossible, testing decision-making under extreme pressure. 30 minutes in, Jake's team was pinned down. Ammunition running low, Thorn injured, enemy forces closing from 3 sides. In the gallery, some spectators were already shaking their heads. This was where human weakness would finally show. Jake's mind raced, analyzing the terrain, enemy patterns, available resources. Then he saw it, a solution so unconventional that no Valorian would consider it. Rhea, he said urgently, we need to surrender. The team froze. Kale rounded on him. What? Not actually surrender. Make them think we're surrendering. Look. Jake pointed to the tactical display. They're converging for the capture. That means they'll cluster here. If we rig our remaining explosives as a trap and fake surrender to draw them in. Rhea's eyes widened as she followed his logic. They'll eliminate themselves. It's completely insane. It's outside their tactical parameters, Jake pressed. They won't expect it. Will it work? For a heartbeat, Rhea hesitated. This was the moment. Trust the human's radical thinking, or fall back on traditional tactics and likely fail honorably. Do it, she decided. They worked frantically. Set the trap. Then Rhea raised her hands in the universal gesture of surrender, calling out in the enemy's language. Jake did the same, his heart hammering as holographic enemies cautiously approached, weapons raised. The enemy commander ordered them bound, their forces clustering exactly where Jake predicted. Closer. Closer. Now. Rhea triggered the explosives remotely. The arena shook with the blast. When the smoke cleared, the enemy force was decimated. Jake's team completed the scenario with time to spare. Silence filled the observation gallery. Then, slowly, Valorian warriors began to stand, their applause starting as a trickle and building to a thunder. Even Kale looked stunned, his earlier hostility replaced by grudging respect. General Vex rose, his expression unreadable. In the arena, Rhea turned to Jake, breathing hard, her violet eyes blazing with triumph and something fiercer. Before protocol or propriety could stop her, she grabbed his face and kissed him, deeply, possessively, in front of everyone. The applause grew louder. When she pulled back, Jake was grinning despite his exhaustion. So, I did okay? You did more than okay, Jake Morrison. Rhea's voice carried clearly in the suddenly quiet arena. You proved that strength comes in many forms, that ingenuity equals prowess, that humans. She looked up at the observation gallery, her words clearly meant for Vex and every doubter present, that humans belong among us as true equals. The applause resumed, but Jake barely heard it. He was lost in Rhea's eyes, in the promise he saw there, a future he'd never dared imagine when he first stepped off that transport ship. Kale approached slowly, his massive frame no longer threatening. He extended his arm in the Valorian warrior's salute. I was wrong about you, human. You have honor. You have courage. He paused. And you fight well for someone so small. Jake laughed, returning the salute. I'll take that as a compliment. As they exited the arena, Rhea's hand found his fingers interlacing. A small gesture, but significant. Public. A statement. There will be consequences, she murmured. Fraternization regulations, cultural concerns. I know. Political complications, career implications. I know. But I find, Rhea continued, her lips curving into a rare, genuine smile, that I don't particularly care. Good, Jake said, because neither do I. General Vex's office was intimidating by design. Walls lined with weapons from a dozen wars. Battle honors displayed prominently. Jake stood at attention while Rhea waited beside him, her expression calm, but her hand occasionally brushing his in silent support. Lieutenant Morrison. Vex's voice was gravelly. You surprised me. That doesn't happen often. Thank you, sir. I wasn't finished. The general stood, circling them like a predator. You performed admirably in the Crucible. Your tactical thinking was innovative. However, your relationship with Commander Valtoris violates several regulations regarding subordinate fraternization. Jake's heart sank. They'd known this was coming. With respect, General, Rhea interjected, Morrison is technically not under my direct command. He's an alliance liaison assigned to... Don't parse words with me, Commander. But Vex's tone wasn't entirely harsh. I've watched you two for weeks. Everyone has. He returned to his desk, pulling up a holographic document. I could enforce regulations, separate you, reassign Morrison to some distant post. The words hung heavy. Jake felt Rhea tense beside him. However, Vex continued, I'm also not a fool. What you did today, Morrison, that kind of adaptive thinking is exactly what we need against the Syndicate. Your partnership works, and I cannot ignore results simply because they make some people uncomfortable. Hope flickered. Sir? I'm authorizing a trial program. Human Valorian tactical teams, with you two as the prototype. Officially, Morrison, you'll be promoted to full tactical officer status, making you Rhea's equal rather than her subordinate. Vex leaned forward. But understand this. You'll both be under intense scrutiny. One mistake, one hint that personal feelings compromise mission effectiveness, and I'll end this immediately. Am I clear? Crystal clear, sir, they answered in unison. After leaving Vex's office, Jake and Rhea walked the compound's observation deck, looking out at the stars through the massive viewport. Around them, Valorian and human personnel moved about their duties, and Jake noticed the looks they received were more curious than hostile now. "So we're official," Jake said, still processing. "An actual partnership." Apparently, Rhea's hand found his again, her silver skin warm against his palm. "Does that frighten you?" "Terrifies me," Jake admitted. "I mean, you're this legendary warrior commander, and I'm just—" "Stop." Rhea turned him to face her fully. "You're not just anything, Jake. Today proved that. You saved the entire team with thinking none of us would have considered. You earned your place here. Because you gave me a chance when no one else would. Because you deserved one." She pulled him closer, and Jake wrapped his arms around her waist as much as he could reach, given their height difference. "I've spent years surrounded by warriors who think exactly like me. You challenge me. Question my assumptions. Make me see things differently. Is that what you want? Someone who questions you?" "It's what I need." Rhea's expression softened in that way Jake had learned meant she was being completely honest. "And perhaps what I've wanted for longer than I realized." They kissed there, silhouetted against the stars, and Jake felt the last of his doubts melt away. Yes, there would be challenges ahead. Political complications, cultural differences, people who would never accept them. But standing there in Rhea's arms, he knew they'd face it all together. "So," Jake said when they finally broke apart, "what happens now?" Rhea's eyes gleamed with mischief and promise. "Now? Now we celebrate properly. I believe I promised to show you Valorian victory traditions." "Should I be worried?" "Probably." She leaned down to murmur in his ear, her breath sending shivers through him. "But I suspect you've developed a taste for dangerous situations." They made their way to Rhea's private quarters, larger than Jake's, befitting her rank, with a stunning view of the nebula beyond the station. The moment the door sealed, the commander facade fell away. Rhea kissed him with an intensity that stole his breath, her hands sliding under his uniform jacket. Jake responded in kind, fingers working at her armor's fastenings with growing confidence. They'd been building to this for weeks. Every loaded glance, every accidental touch, every moment of barely restrained desire. "Are you certain?" Rhea asked, even as her hands explored the planes of his chest. "Once we cross this line—" "I crossed the line weeks ago," Jake interrupted, pulling her down for another kiss. "I'm exactly where I want to be." What followed was a revelation. Rhea was as passionate and commanding in intimacy as she was in battle, but also surprisingly tender, conscious of their physical differences and adjusting accordingly. Jake discovered that what he lacked in size, he made up for in enthusiasm and attention to detail, applying the same observational skills he'd used to learn Valorian combat tactics to learning what made Rhea gasp, what made her silver skin flush darker, what made her call his name in that accent that drove him wild. Hours later, they lay tangled together in her bed, Rhea's head resting on Jake's chest as he traced idle patterns on her arm. "Your heart still beats so fast," she murmured, "even now." "That's just what you do to me." Rhea lifted her head to look at him, violet eyes soft with emotion. "Do you regret it? Coming here? Everything that's happened?" "Not for a second." Jake cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "You know what the best part is? Everyone said I couldn't satisfy you, couldn't keep up with you, couldn't match your expectations, couldn't be what you needed. But I did. And not because I became Valorian, but because I stayed human." "No," Rhea corrected gently. "You satisfied me because you're you. Your humanity is part of that, but so is your courage, your cleverness, your ridiculous stubbornness." She kissed him softly. "Your ability to see me as more than just a commander, as a person." "You're the most incredible person I've ever met," Jake said honestly. "Valorian, human, or otherwise." A notification chimed, morning duty cycle beginning. They groaned in unison, neither wanting to leave the warm cocoon of the bed. "We should probably sleep," Rhea said without moving. "Probably," Jake agreed, also not moving. They smiled at each other, and Jake marveled at how much had changed. Weeks ago, he'd been an outsider, doubted by everyone. Now he was here, in Rhea's arms, having proven himself in ways he never imagined. But as they finally drifted toward sleep, wrapped around each other, Jake knew this was just the beginning. There would be more challenges, more doubters, more battles to fight, both military and personal. He was ready for all of it. Because he'd already accomplished the impossible. He'd earned the respect of an entire compound, excelled in the crucible, and won the heart of the most extraordinary woman he'd ever met. Everyone said he couldn't satisfy her. He'd shown them just how wrong they were. 3 months later, the mission briefing room was packed with both Valorian and human personnel, the first truly integrated tactical unit. At the front, Commander Rhea Valtoris and Lieutenant Jake Morrison stood side by side, presenting their joint strategy for an upcoming operation against Syndicate forces. As Jake explained a complex flanking maneuver on the holographic display, he caught Rhea's eye. She gave him the smallest smile. Private meant only for him, and he felt warmth spread through his chest. They'd built something remarkable here. Not just a relationship, but a bridge between species. Proof that differences in strength, size, or origin didn't define capability or worth. Questions? Rhea asked the assembled group. Keel raised his hand. I have one. When Morrison inevitably suggests something insane during this mission, should we just automatically agree, or do we get to object first? Laughter filled the room. Genuine. Friendly. Object all you want, Jake replied with a grin. But I'm usually right. Arrogant human, Rhea muttered, but her eyes sparkled with affection. As the briefing concluded and the group dispersed, Rhea caught Jake's hand. Dinner tonight? My quarters? Trying to satisfy me again, Commander? Jake teased. Always, Rhea purred, and succeeding, if I recall correctly. Jake pulled her close, not caring who saw. You know what? Everyone said I couldn't satisfy you. But turns out, he kissed her softly, they were wrong about both of us. Rhea smiled against his lips. Completely wrong. And she was absolutely right.